Hello guys, in this video I'd like to tell you about the most commonly used testing types. Let's be honest, you've definitely heard about some of testing types. Maybe you've even tried some of them. But there is a great number of testing types you've never heard about. And actually, that's okay. Moreover, testing types can be classified in numerous ways. And in almost every book or in almost every internet source, the authors will show their own examples of testing types classifications. Yeah, just Google it and you, I don't know, will be surprised or not will be surprised, but still, there are a lot of different testing types classification. Should you know all of them? Definitely no. So in this video, we will concentrate on the most commonly used testing types. And to start with, there are two main broad categories, functional testing and non-functional testing. The difference between functional and non-functional testing is what they test. Functional testing ensures that functions and features of the application work properly. So, functionality. Non-functional testing examines other aspects, how well the application works. Is it reliable? Is it has great usability? Is it okay with its UI interface? Is it accessible by people with different disabilities, and so on? So functional testing ensures that functions, features works properly. Non-functional testing focuses on how well the application works. You can see examples of functional and non-functional testing on this slide. Next division of testing types, this is classification by automation level. So it can be manual testing type or automation testing. Manual testing is testing types when tests are executed by a person manually with the usage of your hands, your eyes, and of course your brains. If we're talking about automated software testing, in this case, testers write code, they write test scripts to automate test execution. And in this case, even the execution of such a case, of such scripts are performed by a special testing tools. Of course, the goal of automation testing is to complete this test execution in a less amount of time, do it quicker, like more efficient, and so on. But be very attentive to the, despite the fact that it is very popular, testing types, still it cannot be implemented to all of the project. Here you can see like aspects of the project that influence the possibility to implement automation. So for simple project, it's better to use manual testing, but if the project is large, long-term, you can see that this is underlined in bold, because automation testing is mostly worked for long-term project. Also, one very important point to keep in your mind is automation testing works only where there is no significant changes in the requirements. Still, keep in your mind that no automation is existing like without manual testers. Still, the initial scenarios are written by manual testers. So by automation level, manual testing executed manually and created by people, and automation testing when testers write code and execute these test scripts by a special testing tool. One more classification is by access to the internal structure, by access reference to the code. and not only access but actually understanding of the code. And we've got three testing types here: black box testing, white box testing, and gray box testing. If we are talking about black box testing, it's a way of software testing in which the internal structure or the program or the code is hidden. We have no access and nothing is known about it for a testers. I do not know programming language, I cannot understand the code, and I have no access to it. The idea of black box testing is to test application from the side of final user. So you communicate, you interact with this application from side of external final user. If we are talking about white box testing, is a way of testing, when testers has knowledge and access to the internal structure. So I understand the physical logic flow, I understand the code, the architecture of application, and I've got access to the source code. In this case, I'm able to perform white box testing. Gray box testing is kind of combination of black box testing technique and white box testing techniques. That means that gray box testing is a technique to test this software product with partial knowledge of internal structure of the application or partial access to the application. So by access to the code of the application, it can be black box testing, no access to the code, no knowledge of the code, just from the position of final users. Mostly, manual testers are using these testing types. White box testing means that you've got appropriate knowledge of the internal logic of your application and you've got access to its code. Gray box testing, this is a mix of black box and white box testing, and it means that you've got a partial knowledge of internal structure or partial access to the code. The next classification of testing types is by code execution. So it can be static testing or dynamic testing. Static testing is performed without executing the code of the application. What does it mean? You do not execute your web application. You do not launch your mobile or desktop application. So what are you going to test? You're going to test your documents and mostly, of course, requirement. Maybe kind of different scheme, for example, database scheme, different mockups, prototypes, maybe parts of the code if you have knowledge of it. If we are talking about dynamic testing, this is testing that performed with running the code. So with actual executing the code, with going to the application and testing its actual behavior. So static testing without launching, without executing the code of the application, and dynamic with running the code. Next classification, testing types classification is by the ways of dealing with the application. So it can be positive testing or negative testing. If you are, as a tester, performing positive testing, it means that you perform it strictly according to the requirements, without any unacceptable actions, without trying to input any incorrect data, and so on. So if you've got a field that accepts from 1 to 5 symbols, you will insert exactly from 1 to 5 symbols in this range. If your text field accepts only English letters, you will insert only English letters. On the contrary, negative testing means that you are going to use the data that potentially leads to errors. For example, if my system accepts only images of 1, 2 formats, yeah, like PNG format, I will try to upload GIF images. So I will use the data that surely will lead to errors. And pay attention, note please, that the main idea of negative testing is not like imply an error, yeah? The idea on the contrary is to check, to verify that application works correctly, it behaves correctly in such situation. For example, it will inform our user that he is using kind of invaded data, or if his password cannot be validated, and so on. So negative test should verify that the system behaves correctly, even in the situation of potential errors from the user side, I mean mostly. So positive testing, strict testing strictly according to the requirement, and negative testing, violating this requirement in idea of checking that application will behave correctly, even in this critical situation. And we've got two classification, yeah, like by levels. The first classification is by functional testing level. It means that in this classification, we will look at testing from the position of importance features under the test. Smoke testing, critical path testing, and extended testing. If we are talking about smoke testing, so it focuses on the most basic, most important, most crucial features. If while smoke testing you found that something doesn't work, this is usually blocker. This is like outstanding. It should be fixed first, because without these features, the whole application just doesn't make any sense. So the most crucial functionality is tested under smoke testing. Critical path testing is aimed to test the functionality that is usually used by typical users in their daily activities. This is like authorization in their, I don't know, work application, maybe making different kind of mistake, but this is usual activities. This is commonly used features with quite a high priority. If we are talking about extended testing, it means that we are testing features that are ranked low in terms of importance. So practically unimportant features or some kind of very unusual testing scenarios. Again, if your test field accepts from 1 to 5 symbols, and critical path testing will be tried to insert, I don't know, maybe 10 symbols, 7 symbols. But let's be honest, it's quite impossible from the position of a typical user try to insert, I don't know, maybe in password field about 5,000 symbols. So this is extended scenario. And these kind of scenarios are tested under extended testing. So smoke testing, the most crucial functionality, critical path testing, typical users' behavior, their daily activities, daily interaction with the site, and extended testing. This is low-ranked features in terms of importance, or like rare users scenarios. One more classification by testing level you can see on this slide. This is unit, component, integration, system, and acceptance testing. This is kind of stages of testing according to parts of the application. So unit testing, that's testing specific lines of the code, is usually performed by developers. So they're just checking the lines of the codes. Uh, Component testing or module testing is aimed at testing individual, kind of separated, small parts of the application, and these parts can be tested in isolation from other parts. For example, I can test creation of profile, just like only the feature of creation profile without integration with other components of the system. Integration testing is aimed actually at testing the interaction between several parts of the application. For example, I'm testing shopping cart in online store, but agree it's useless if it is not integrated with possibility to check out, to pay for the goods I've selected. In this case, I will use integration testing, to check the interaction between several parts of the application. System testing is aimed at checking the entire application, test the application as a whole, when the previous stages are completed. The last stage, it is acceptance testing, and it's pretty similar to the system testing, but here the test is carried out by some selected maybe end users from the customer side. And if we are talking about acceptance testing, this is the final stage, and it determines if the software is finally ready to be launched to the general public. Again, it's usually performed at the customer side. There are two main types of acceptance testing: alpha testing and beta testing. If we are talking about alpha testing, it is done by internal independent team. This team can be chosen by a customer. It can be the same team as developed the product, but still it is independent check, but from the side of internal team inside the organization. If we are talking about beta testing, in this case, testing is done by a selected group of users, and it is done on their devices, their own operating system, and so on. Beta testing is maybe mostly commonly associated with game testing when the game is partially ready to release and the customer wants to have feedback from final user side. So in this case, it can be released to a selected group of users. Gamma testing for today is counted like out of date, and it was performed when the application was absolutely ready for release, to the specified requirement, and these checks was performed directly without going through all other activities at homes, but by number of final users. But gamma testing is killed off by decreased time cycles, competitive pressure of today's market, and profits is like doubtful for today. So the main testing types of acceptance testing for today is alpha testing, inside the organization, and beta testing done by a selected group of users on their devices, One more classification of testing types is classification by formalization level. The testing can be strictly formalized by test cases, and in this case, it is called test cases based testing. This is a very formalized approach when you strictly follow to previously created test cases. It can be also exploratory testing when you still have prepared test cases, but you're doing your testing on the fly, You realize on your ideas that can be beyond the limits of these created test cases. What will happen if I go there? While passing the test cases, strictly following the steps, you've decided to change something. What about checking this? What about checking that? Yeah, you are like explore, yeah, like overall your application. So in this case, this is like less formalized testing, exploratory testing. And least formalized, absolutely ad hoc testings means that no testing documentation, no test cases, no any lists to be checked. Yeah, the testers relies on his experience, on his intuition. He does not know this application. He hasn't seen any requirements. He used only his professionalism to test this application. So by formalization level, it can be strictly formalized, and in this case, it is test cases based testing. It can be exploratory testing when you think beyond the limits of the previously created test cases, and ad hoc testing, like the least formalized approach, when no testing documentation, no any knowledge of requirements or this application at all, only your experience, professionalism, and intuition. In this case, it is ad hoc testing. Also, there are testing types that can be classified by the changes in the application. For example, if developer introduces completely brand new feature, you will perform new feature testing. Obvious, yeah, no surprise. Still, there are some things to think about retesting and regression testing. Retesting means that you confirm, that you verify the changes that were made in order to fix the bug. So actually retesting, you're going to execute the test case which was previously failed, I don't know, blocked, yeah, but it was, the feature was fixed, and now you should confirm that the feature really was fixed, that it works properly. So retesting, the synonym is confirmation testing, verification testing. This is testing of previously tested functionality in order to confirm that bug that appeared in this functionality was fixed. So you retest just one test case. Follow only selected steps to reproduce. Regression testing, in this case, you are checking that previously working functionality wasn't affected by new changes. It can be like a couple of new feature implemented, yeah. Maybe some absolutely new functional was implemented, but this new functionality can also affect and cause some errors in the functionality that was great. Yeah, maybe it is core functionality, and now it's just crushed by the system changes. In this case, you perform regression testing to confirm that previously worked functionality works properly, continue working properly. For regression testing, you're going to check test cases from your library, yeah, to get ideas to check, analyzing what can be affected by these new changes. So you should check like a large area than in case of retesting. In case of retesting, again, just a small piece, like one test case, should be passed one more time. In case of regression, you should identify the area that can be affected by new changes and recheck this area as a whole, yeah, to prove that previously working functionality continue working. One more classification, I think it's obvious. I'm not gonna provide you with an extended explanation. This is testing types classification by application nature. Of course, if you're testing web application, this is testing type web application testing. Also, desktop application testing and mobile application testing. All that you should understand that this type of testing has a specific. For example, mobile application testing is usually now separated, is kind of field of testing that should be learned separately. So testing types by application nature means testing the application relying on the peculiarities based on their nature. One more testing types classification is by presentation tier. Here we've got three like tiers, or the synonyms with the word tier is layers, and this is like layers of your application. If we are talking about presentation tier testing, this is like external layer of your application, and it is mostly interface testing. It focuses on the parts of the application which is responsible for the interaction with outer world, with users, with other maybe applications, and so on. The next level, the next layer, tier, is application tier testing, or you've got the synonym business logic tier testing. This application tier testing focuses on finding errors in the business logic of your internet application. You will find this layer very similar to the testing standalone application in that you can employ both white and black box technique. Actually, to test application tier properly, you should have at least some knowledge of how this back-end layer works. Data tier testing, this is like the last type here, focuses on the part of the application that is responsible for storage and for certain processing of a data, usually in a database. So presentation tier testing, like interaction with outer world, interface testing. Application tier testing, this is testing finding any errors in the business logic of your application, like in backend. Data tier testing focuses on storage and processing of the data, mostly on the databases. One testing types that stands like aside here in this classification, this is API testing, and if you are very beginner, I definitely will not be able to explain this type of testing to you. Maybe if you've got at least like a brief understanding what is API, and actually this abbreviation stands for Application Programming Interface. This is like interface that helps to communicate, different layers of the application, From the previous slide, you remember presentation layer, like application or business layer, and database layer, and API testing helps to communicate, to exchange the data between mostly business layer and database layer. And the idea of API testing is to perform the testing that validates that the logic of this communication is correct. And its focus is on the checking the data exchange, on the architecture of this data, and it's mostly done with using special tools. You've got some examples on the slide of these tools, but for API testing, we will have like a more closer look a little bit later because it's closely connected to your technical skills. Of course, there are a great number of different non-functional testing types. Let's stop maybe on the most important ones. If we are talking about non-functional testing types, maybe the first one that should be mentioned is installation testing. This is a process of testing, checking if the product can be easily installed in a specified in the requirements environment. It should be easily uninstalled if user wants it, and of course, it should be updated. I suppose that the first reaction when you hear about non-functional testing types will be idea about checking user interface, graphic user interface. That's GUI testing. Testing performed by interacting with graphical user interface. You're going to check colors, font size, styles, formatting, controls and their behavior, alignments, spelling, grammar mistakes, images, exact text of different messages, error messages, notification messages, successful messages, and the way they are displayed, and so on. So GUI testing is like testing the picture of interaction of our final users with the interface of our application. Compatibility testing stands for checking the ability of our application to work in a different environment. For example, compatibility with hardware platforms is configuration testing, like a subtype of compatibility testing. You can also check compatibility with different browsers and different browsers version. This is cross-browser version. So compatibility testing is ability of our application to work on a different requirements, to have compatibility with different with different environment. One more important non-functional testing type is performance testing. Actually, for now, this is like a group of specially taught people who performs performance testing, And of course, as manual testers, you will also have possibility to look through the performance scale of your application. For example, using developers tools in Google Chrome, you can check how fast is your site is uploading, downloading something. This is ideas for performance testing. How fast, how effectively your application works. And there are a huge amount of different subtypes for performance testing, but let's stop on the most commonly used. This is load testing, stress testing, and volume testing. Volume testing means that you will check the performance of your application when processing different, and as you can see here, usually large volumes of data. So it's clear from its title, volume testing means that you will check how your application works while working with a huge amount of different data. If we are talking about load and stress testing, we will check the ability of your application to maintain, some load. But if we are talking about load testing, it means that that's going to be limited load. It's going to be allowed load on your application. For example, if we are talking about the application that sells tickets, and we expect that the load to this side, the limit of users that can buy the tickets at once is 1,000 people, let's imagine something like that. So I will check while load testing that when 1,000 people, this is emulated, you should understand 1,000 people are buying tickets, the performance of the site is not influenced in no way. So load testing means that I will check the performance of my site under specified limits. Stress testing means that I will check the application's behavior under abnormal load. It means that I will check not 1,000, not one allowed thousand of people, but maybe 10,000 of people. So stress testing, this is like extreme situations, and we should check the performance of the application, its behavior under these abnormal stress loads. So performance testing, volume testing, this is processing huge, large volumes of data. Load testing, this is testing performance of your application under allowed limits of load. And if we are talking about stress testing, this is testing the performance of your application under abnormal load, like extremely abnormal load of your application. Some more examples of non-functional testing types. It can be security testing, as testing of your application's abilities to withstand some kinds of attempts to access restricted, to access vulnerable data, to be restricted for any hackers penetration attacks, and so on. Accessibility testing as a type of non-functional testing type focuses on how easy our application can be used by users with different kinds of disabilities. For example, vision disabilities, physical disabilities, literacy disabilities, and so on. Usability testing is testing that is focused on how easy, how understandable, how efficient our application is for final users. Is it easy to understand how to navigate through our site? Is it used like commonly known patterns, commonly known norms? For example, red color for no and green color for yes. Is it any usability bugs or some experience while using this application that can be considered as inefficient? So usability, how easy, how convenient our application for user. This is the focus of usability testing. And maybe the last for today, but not the least, this is internationalization testing and localization testing. Despite the fact that internalization is always like goes with testing, is not a testing. Internalization is a process of creation, of designing the application that is ready to be localized, that is ready to be translated in order to go to global market. What does it mean? It means that internalization, while performing internalization testing, you are actually just checking, can it be localized to go to another local market or no? What does it mean localized? And here we go to localization testing. Localization testing is checking how good, how well the application was adapted, was localized to a specific, to a unique local market, to a unique locale. So you've got like ideas what should be checked. Of course, date and time formats, maybe currency, some different numerics, cultural peculiarities like schemes of colors, like symbols that mean different in different location, like buttons and the captions on the buttons, yeah, like legal requirements to the application, yeah, like I don't know, diversity, is it allowed or not in your application? So internalization is the process of design, is the process of creation the application that can be localized, while localization is testing how good this application was translated, how well it was localized. Of course, this list of ideas for localization checks is not full. If you are interested, please Google it. Yeah, that's very interesting examples in the internet. And that's all. And to sum up, one more time, I'd like to mention that there is no one approved classification, and there is a lot of different testing types that were not mentioned during this video, and that's okay because as junior testers, as beginners, you should concentrate on the most commonly used testing types. Please understand them, be able to explain each of them, be able to give some examples which testing types should be used on the project, which one are inappropriate to this kind of the project. So that's all about testing types for today. Bye.